Bob Ferguson. I was a part of the French 75.
Bitch, I felt like Tony Montana!
A stoner dad who used to blow things up for a revolution has to remember how to be dangerous when the guy who wants him dead takes his daughter. Leonardo DiCaprio spent this entire movie in a bathrobe, failing at everything, and somehow that makes it one of his best performances of the decade. In today's video, I'm looking at One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson's new action thriller where DiCaprio plays Bob, a washed-up ex-revolutionary living off the grid in a paranoid haze with his teenage daughter Willa. Then Sean Penn shows up as Colonel Lockjaw, a corrupt, genuinely unhinged military officer, and Willa goes missing. Bob has to drag himself back into a fight he was never really winning in the first place. The thing nobody's talking about? This is less of an action movie and more of a failure comedy dressed up as a thriller. And that's exactly what makes it worth your time. Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another opens like a heist film. A group of guerrilla revolutionaries called the French 75 storm a U.S.-Mexico border detention center, release the immigrants inside, and their leader, a woman named Perfidia Beverly Hills, played by a flat-out electric Teyana Taylor, sexually humiliates the military colonel in charge and walks him out of his own base. It's one of the most confident opening scenes in years. You think you know exactly what kind of movie you're watching. You don't. That colonel, Sean Penn as the deeply unhinged Colonel Lockjaw, becomes so psychologically destroyed by that encounter that he spends the entire rest of the film obsessively hunting Perfidia. And DiCaprio's Bob, Perfidia's partner and explosives expert, ends up raising their daughter alone in a paranoid, weed-fogged half-life in a sanctuary city called Bactan Cross. 16 years later, still looking over his shoulder, still not sure if the fight is over or if it ever was, Leonardo DiCaprio spent most of this movie in a bathrobe. And it might be his best performance in a decade. Because here's what nobody warned you about. This isn't an action movie. The trailer lied to you. What PTA actually made is a dark screwball comedy about a man who used to matter, surrounded by people who still do. Bob isn't the hero. He's barely keeping it together. He argues with his daughter's history teachers. He smokes joints and watches the Battle of Algiers on loop like it's comfort TV. When danger finally finds him, his response isn't cool or calculated. It's frantic, fumbling, and somehow deeply human. Benicio del Toro shows up as Willa's martial arts teacher running what he calls his Latino Harriet Tubman situation. And honestly, you could build an entire separate movie around just him. The film is 3 hours long and it earns every minute. Johnny Greenwood's score sounds like a single piano key being struck in an empty room. Unsettling and strange and completely right for a story about people waiting for something terrible to happen. The cinematography is almost painterly at times, Substack. And there's a shot of the border wall early on that looks like it belongs in a museum. What PTA is really making here is a film about the generation that fought and lost and what they pass down to the one that comes after them. It's angry and funny and surprisingly tender. Is it a perfect film? No. Some characters feel thin. The politics occasionally tip into lecture. But the emotional core holds. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud about this film. DiCaprio is the third best performance in it, and when the credits roll, you'll understand exactly why that's a compliment. Despite his best dramatic effort in years, Leonardo DiCaprio scrambling through police raids and political riots in a bathrobe is only the third strongest performance in One Battle After Another. Rotten Tomatoes. That's not a criticism. That's just the reality of what PTA built around him. Because Teyana Taylor as Perfidia Beverly Hills is operating on a completely different frequency, bold, reckless, magnetic, and genuinely dangerous. And Sean Penn as Colonel Lockjaw is doing something so specific and so strange that you can't look away even when you want to. Penn flexes his muscles, grits his teeth, and growls his lines, but somehow threads the needle between truth and caricature. A ridiculous human being who wants nothing more than the power that men achieve when they're able to destroy not just everything around them, but history itself. IndieWire. And that last part is the whole movie, really. This isn't about the revolution winning. The film's revolutionaries don't have much of a chance, and their battle against the government is not actually what the movie is about. Awards Daily. What it's about is what gets left behind. The daughter raised by a man who used to blow things up and now mostly stares at walls. A mentor running a sanctuary city like a one-man underground railroad. A villain joining a secret white nationalist club called, and I'm not making this up, the Christmas Adventurers Club. DiCaprio is the third best performance in this film, and that somehow makes it one of his best films. Because being the emotional anchor of a story where everyone around you is louder, stranger, and more extreme than you, that's its own kind of acting. The film's youth suffer from the sins of their fathers scrambling to undo their past mistakes. Almost every character suffers as a result of someone else's actions, and spends most of the film scrambling to survive with their limited skill sets. Substack Bob is the purest version of that. He didn't start the fire, he just never figured out how to stop carrying it. The political layer here is deliberately uncomfortable too. Where some critics see a left-wing storyline, others see a nuanced cautionary tale about the risks of political extremism on both sides. BAM PTA doesn't let the French 75 off the hook. Perfidia rats out her own people to save herself. The revolution has no real ideology beyond slogans. The only character who actually seems to be doing good in a quiet, consistent, non-explosive way is Benicio del Toro's sensei Sergio. Teaching karate, sheltering the undocumented, asking nothing in return. In a messy world that tries to entice people to embrace extremes, the sensei hasn't succumbed to that pull. Bam! He's the moral center of the film. He's also barely in it. But do you guys want to dissect the actual psychology in this film? Because PTA didn't just write characters, he wrote case studies. First, the Bob Ferguson. Diagnosis: complicated grief with a side of avoidant attachment and chronic weed dependency. This man spent 16 years convincing himself that hiding in a sanctuary city, smoking himself into a fog, and telling his daughter bedtime stories about her mother, the revolutionary hero, was parenting. It wasn't parenting. It was elaborate denial. Bob isn't protecting Willa. He's protecting the version of his life that still makes sense to him. The bathrobe isn't a costume choice. It's a symptom. Willa is often the one trying to rein in her unhinged dad. She's the parent, and he's the overgrown teenager who never got to finish grieving. One battle after another movie. That's not quirky. That's textbook role reversal caused by unprocessed trauma. But sure, Bob, great job. Really nailed fatherhood. And yet, here's the thing. His love for that kid is the most real thing in the entire film. Now, Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw. Where do we even begin? Diagnosis: erotic humiliation disorder meets malignant narcissism, meets a man who has never once in his life looked in a mirror and told himself the truth. Lockjaw is torn. He's a racist being held at gunpoint by a young black woman, which is humiliating, and at the same time, this situation fulfills his most twisted fantasies. Princeton Garden Theater. He spends the next 16 years hunting the woman who did that to him. He rises through the military ranks. He wins medals. He gets invited into a white supremacist secret society called, I need you to hear this, the Christmas Adventurers Club. And he's trying to join because he wants to belong somewhere. That's it. That's the whole thing. The most dangerous man in the movie just wants to sit at the cool kids' table. Lockjaw is running from his own emotions and his attraction to Perfidia, which he can't control. Letterboxed. The jaw is literally clenched shut. The name is the character. PTA isn't being subtle, and I respect it. And yet, here's the thing. His love for that kid is the most real thing in the entire film too, which makes him so much worse. Because when Lockjaw runs a DNA test on Willa and confirms she's his biological daughter, Penn's eyes convey mixed feelings. But he immediately asserts his villainy with some truly repugnant words and actions. Substack. He knows. He feels something. And he buries it instantly because feeling it would collapse the entire architecture of who he's decided to be. That's not evil in the comic book sense. That's the banal, bureaucratic, self-serving evil that actually runs the world. The man cried at his Christmas Adventurers Club interview. He cried, either for his lost Perfidia or the joy of cracking down on those illegals. Probably both. Bam! And then there's Perfidia. Diagnosis: post-traumatic identity collapse wrapped inside revolutionary idealism, wrapped inside a woman who decided very early that the cause was easier to love than a person. After becoming a mother, her violent impulses intensify. The bank robbery, where she loses control and pulls the trigger, becomes the turning point that exposes how far she's drifted from the person she once claimed to be. Awards daily. She rats out the French 75 to save herself and her child. Then she vanishes to Mexico. Then she writes a letter that Bob holds for 16 years before giving it to Willa. That letter is the most devastating 3 minutes of the film, and she's not even in the room. His love for that kid is the most real thing in the entire film. Every single one of these people is broken in a completely different direction. And the kid, Willa, is the one standing in the middle of all their wreckage, being asked to figure out who she is. That's the movie. That's what nobody's talking about. Let's talk about the ending, because this is where PTA either earns everything he spent 3 hours setting up or doesn't. And honestly, it's both. Simultaneously. Which is very on brand for a man who made a movie about a guy who drinks milkshakes and murders people and called it profound. Nobody saves Willa. Willa saves herself. And that is the whole movie in one sentence. Bob does not really save Willa. She saves herself. IndieWire. After being kidnapped by Lockjaw, Her own biological father, let's not forget, a man who immediately ordered her killed to protect his white supremacist club membership. She escapes, steals a car, and drives it through a mountainous expanse of California desert in a three-way car chase that somehow resolves every single theme of the film in about 12 minutes. Willa lures Smith into a crash in the rolling hills and shoots him dead when he cannot answer the revolutionary's signature code. Awards daily. A teenage girl, raised by a man in a bathrobe watching the Battle of Algiers on loop, took out a trained killer using a secret code and a winding road. Bob was nearby, yes. Spiritually supportive, emotionally present, also slightly drunk and definitely panicking. So, great parenting, Bob. Really stuck the landing. Nobody saves Willa. Willa saves herself. She also had to save Bob from Bob. And that's the psychological diagnosis this whole film is quietly making. Because here's what the ending is actually doing. Bob represents someone who has stepped away from the fight after losing too much. His revolution has narrowed down to one priority: protecting Willa and keeping her alive. One battle after another movie. And the film's final gut punch is that even that was too ambitious for him. He needed a karate teacher, a revolutionary network, and his own teenage daughter to do it. Diagnosis for Bob. Final verdict. Learned helplessness. Classic. The man who used to blow up government property now can't operate an iPhone. After finding each other, Bob returns home and is seen trying to learn how to operate an iPhone, signaling that he is finally ready to rejoin society. Rotten Tomatoes. That's your hero arc. That's the whole character journey. Man learns to unlock a phone. Roll credits. And then Perfidia's letter. In the letter, she admits that her revolutionary methods have been unsuccessful, but reiterates the importance of trying to change the world. Awards daily. She tells Willa she thinks of her every single day. She says someday, when it's safe, Willa will find her. And Bob has been holding this letter for 16 years without giving it to his daughter. 16 years. That's not protection. That's a man who couldn't face a conversation, so he just didn't have it. Avoidant attachment disorder. Ongoing, untreated, chronic. We've been over this. Willa's final choice to join a protest signals that the fight isn't over. It's just changed shape. Substack. She hears a police scanner. There's a protest in Oakland. She runs out the door. The cycle continues. The daughter of a revolutionary, raised by a man who gave up, choosing to begin again. That's not a hopeful ending. That's an honest one. And in 2025, those are increasingly hard to find. This is a film that wants to be epic but ends up didactic IMDb in places, sure. It's messy, some threads don't close, but messy and honest beats clean and empty every single time. Watch it, argue about it. Come back here and tell me I'm wrong in the comments. I'll be here, probably in a bathrobe. And please subscribe if you want me to get a better one, probably from VS.